Hello, here we are. We're going to finish up Joshua tonight and we're going to start Judges, which will be very interesting. So let's get going here. We have got Joshua 23. After a long time had passed, and the Lord had given Israel rest from all their enemies around them, Joshua, by then a very old man, summoned all Israel, their elders, leaders, judges, officials, and said to them, I am very old. You yourselves have seen everything the Lord your God has done to all these nations for your sake. It was the Lord your God who fought for you. Remember how I have allotted as an inheritance for your tribes all the land of the nations that remain, the nations that I conquered, between the Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea in the west. The Lord your God, remember, he conquered 31 kings. That's something to remember when you feel like you can't do something. Joshua conquered 31 kings. The Lord your God himself will push them out for your sake. He'll drive them out before you, and you will take possession of their land as the Lord your God promised you. Be very strong. Be careful to obey all that is written in the book of the law of Moses without turning aside to the right or to the left. Do not associate with these nations that remain among you. Do not invoke the names of their gods or swear by them. You must not serve them or bow down to them, but you're to hold fast to the Lord your God as you have until now. The Lord has driven out before you great and powerful nations. To this day, no one's been able to withstand you. One of you routs 1,000 because the Lord your God fights for you, just as he promised. And that's how Joshua beat 31 kings. Okay, and that's how you'll win your battles too, because the Lord will fight for you, just as he promised. So be very careful to love the Lord your God. But if you turn away and ally yourselves with the survivors of these nations that remain among you, and if you intermarry with them and associate with them, then you may be sure that the Lord your God will no longer drive out these nations before you. Instead, they'll become snares and traps for you, whips on your backs, and thorns in your eyes until you perish from this good land which the Lord your God has given you. Now I'm about to go the way of all the earth, meaning he's going to die. You know with all your heart and soul that not one of all the good promises the Lord your God gave you has failed. Every promise has been fulfilled, not one has failed. But just as all the good things the Lord your God has promised you have come to you, so he will bring on you all the evil things he's threatened until the Lord your God's destroyed you from this good land he's given you. If you violate the covenant of the Lord your God, which he commanded you, and go and serve other gods and bow down to them, the Lord's anger will burn against you and you'll quickly perish from the good land he's given you. Joshua 24, and the last one of this book. Then Joshua assembled all the tribes of Israel at Shechem. He summoned the elders, leaders, judges, and officials of Israel, and they presented themselves before God. Joshua said to all the people, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Long ago, your ancestors, including Terah, T-E-R-A-H, the father of Abraham and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates River and worshipped other gods. But I took your father Abraham from the land beyond the Euphrates and led him throughout Canaan and gave him many descendants. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. I assigned the hill country of Seir to Esau, but Jacob and his family went down to Egypt. Then I sent Moses and Aaron, and I afflicted the Egyptians by what I did there, and I brought you out. When I brought your people out of Egypt, you came to the sea, and the Egyptians pursued them with chariots and horsemen as far as the Red Sea. But they cried to the Lord for help, and he put darkness between you and the Egyptians. He brought the sea over them and covered them. You saw with your own eyes what I did to the Egyptians. Then you lived in the wilderness for a long time. I brought you to the land of the Amorites who lived east of the Jordan. They fought against you, but I gave them into your hands. I destroyed them from before you, and you took possession of their land. When Balak, son of Zippor, the king of Moab, prepared to fight against Israel, he sent for Balaam, son of Beor, to put a curse on you. But I would not listen to Balaam, so he blessed you again and again, and I delivered you out of his hand. Then you crossed the Jordan and came to Jericho. The citizens of Jericho fought against you, as did also the Amorites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, Girgashites, Hivites, and Jebusites, but I gave them into your hands. I sent the hornet ahead of you, which drove them out before you. Also, the 2 Amorite kings. You didn't do it with your own sword and bow. So I gave you a land of which you didn't toil, and cities you didn't build, and you live in them and eat from vineyards and olive groves that you didn't plant. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you'll serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you're living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Then the people answered, Far be it from us to forsake the Lord to serve other gods. It was the Lord our God himself who brought us and our parents up out of Egypt from that land of slavery and performed those great signs before our eyes. He protected us on our entire journey and among all the nations through which we traveled. And the Lord drove out before us all the nations, including the Amorites who lived in the land. We too will serve the Lord because he is our God. Joshua said to the people, You're not able to serve the Lord. He's a holy God. He's a jealous God. He will not forgive your rebellion and your sins. If you forsake the Lord and serve foreign gods, he'll turn and bring disaster on you and make an end of you after he's been good to you. But the people said to Joshua, No, we will serve the Lord. Then Joshua said, You're witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen to serve the Lord. Yes, we are witnesses, they replied. Now then, said Joshua, throw away the foreign gods that are among you and yield your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel. And the people said to Joshua, We will serve the Lord our God and obey him. On that day, Joshua made a covenant for the people, and there at Shechem, he reaffirmed for them decrees and laws. And Joshua recorded these things in the book of the law of God. Then he took a large stone and set it up there under the oak near the holy place of the Lord. See, he said to all the people, this stone will be a witness against us. It's heard all the words the Lord has said to us. It'll be a witness against you if you're untrue to your God. Then Joshua dismissed the people, each to their own inheritance. After these things, Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. And they buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnath-Serah, in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gaash. Israel served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him and who had experienced everything the Lord had done for Israel. And Joseph's bones, which the Israelites had brought up from Egypt, were buried at Shechem, in the tract of land that Jacob bought for 100 pieces of silver from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. This became the inheritance of Joseph's descendants. And Eleazar, son of Aaron, died and was buried at Gibeah, which had been allotted to his son Phinehas in the hill country of Ephraim. A lot of people being buried in, I want to say in the name of Joseph. Hold on one second. Right. Ephraim. They're in the hill country of Ephraim, and then Gibeah, which is also in the hill country of Ephraim. And Ephraim was one of Joseph's sons. All right, so now we're going to start the book of Judges, chapter 1. After the death of Joshua, the Israelites asked the Lord, "Who of us is to go up first to fight against the Canaanites?" The Lord answered, "Judah shall go up. I've given the land into their hands," meaning the tribe of Judah. The men of Judah then said to the Simeonites, their fellow Israelites, "Come up with us into the territory allotted to us to fight against the Canaanites. We in turn will go with you into yours." So the Simeonites went with them. When Judah attacked, the Lord gave the Canaanites and Perizzites into their hands, and they struck down 10,000 men at Bezek. It was there that they found Adoni-Bezek and fought against him, putting to rout the Canaanites and Perizzites. Adoni-Bezek fled, but they chased him and caught him and cut off his thumbs and big toes. Then Adoni-Bezek said, 70 kings with their thumbs and big toes cut off have picked up scraps under my table. Now God has paid me back for what I did to them. Then they brought him to Jerusalem and he died there. Okay, so what does that mean? 70 kings with their thumbs. Oh, he's saying I've done the same to other kings and they've picked up scraps under my table. Now God's paid me back for what I did to them. So he got exactly what he gave. The men of Judah attacked Jerusalem also and took it. They put the city to the sword and set it on fire. After that, Judah went down to fight against the Canaanites living in the hill country, the Negev, and the western foothills. They advanced against the Canaanites living in Hebron, formerly called Kiriath Arba, and defeated Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmai. From there, they advanced against the people living in Debir, formerly called Kiriath Sepher. And Caleb said, "I'll give my daughter Achsah in marriage to the man who attacks and captures Kiriath Sepher." Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, took it, so Caleb gave his daughter Achsah to him in marriage. One day, when she came to Othniel, she urged him to ask her father for a field. When she got off her donkey, Caleb asked her, "What can I do for you?" She replied, "Do me a special favor. Since you've given me land in the Negev, give me also springs of water." And we've heard this story before. So Caleb gave her the upper and lower springs. The descendants of Moses' father-in-law, the Kenite, went up from the city of palms with the people of Judah to live among the inhabitants of the desert of Judah in the Negev near Arad. Now, the Negev, once again, is a desert. That's a desert region. Then the men of Judah went with the Simeonites, their fellow Israelites, and attacked the Canaanites living in Zephath, and they totally destroyed the city. Therefore, it was called Hormah. Judah also took Gaza, Ashkelon, and Ekron, each city with its territory. The Lord was with the men of Judah. They took possession of the hill country, but they were unable to drive the people from the plains because they had chariots fitted with iron. As Moses had promised, Hebron was given to Caleb, who drove from it the 3 sons of Anak. The Benjamites, however, did not drive out the Jebusites who were living in Jerusalem. And this day, the Jebusites lived there with the Benjamites. Now, the tribes of Joseph attacked Bethel, and the Lord was with them. When they sent men to spy out Bethel, formerly called Luz, L-U-Z, the spies saw a man coming out of the city, and they said to him, "Show us how to get into the city, and we'll see that you're treated well." So he showed them, and they put the city to the sword, but spared the man and his whole family. He then went to the land of the Hittites, where he built a city and called it Luz, which is its name to this day. But Manasseh did not drive out the people of Bethshan or Tanakh or Dor or Ibleam or Megiddo and their surrounding settlements, for the Canaanites were determined to live in that land. When Israel became strong, they pressed the Canaanites into forced labor, but never drove them out completely. Nor did Ephraim drive out the Canaanites living in Gezer, but the Canaanites continued to live there among them. Neither did Zebulun drive out the Canaanites living in Kitron or Naalal, so these Canaanites lived among them. But Zebulun did subject them to forced labor. So he did. Nor did Asher drive out those living in Akko or Sidon or Alab or Aksib or Helba or Aphek or Rehob, the Asherites living among the Canaanite inhabitants of the land, because they didn't drive them out. Neither did Naphtali drive out those living in Beth Shemesh and Beth Anath, but the Naphtalites too lived among the Canaanite inhabitants of the land, and those living in Beth Shemesh and Beth Anath became forced laborers for them. The Amorites confined the Danites to the hill country, not allowing them to come down into the plain. Now, this is the tribe of Dan, and the Amorites are keeping them pushed back up into the hills. And the Amorites were determined also to hold out in Mount Heres, Aijalon, and Shalbim. But when the power of the tribes of Joseph increased, they too were pressed into forced labor. The boundary of the Amorites was from Scorpion Pass to Selah and beyond. Okay, last one for the night, Judges 2, okay? The angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochum and said, I brought you up out of Egypt. So that sounds like Jesus. I mean, it's the Lord, the angel of the Lord. I brought you up out of Egypt and led you into the land I swore to give to your ancestors. I said, I will never break my covenant with you, and you shall not make a covenant with the people of this land, but you shall break down their altars. Yet you've disobeyed me. Why have you done this? And I've also said, I'll not drive them out before you. They'll become traps for you, and their gods will become snares for you. When the angel of the Lord had spoken these things to all the Israelites, the people wept aloud, and they called the place Bochum. There they offered sacrifices to the Lord. Now, we often hear the term, the angel of the Lord, and we've always just assumed it was Jesus, because we don't, it's either Jesus or God, and that's just terminology. The angel of the Lord, okay, I don't know. But usually the angel of the Lord is a reference to Jesus Christ before we knew him as Jesus Christ, okay? Here he is in the Old Testament. After Joshua had dismissed the Israelites, they went to take possession of the land, each to their own inheritance. The people served the Lord. So this is kind of a repeat. The people served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him and who had seen all the great things the Lord had done for Israel. Remember, this is a book that Moses is writing. Okay, so there's going to be very human, not error in terms of what we're reading, but, sometimes there'll be repeated paragraphs, it's human. He's a human writing it, but he's under the inspiration of God, and also the things he lived through and what he knows, okay? I believe the book, I know that the first 5 are written by Moses, so I'm going to have to look up as soon as I'm through with this, I'm going to look up who do we think wrote Judges. All right. Joshua, son of Nun. So whoever this is, they're repeating it here. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. They buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnath Heres in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gash. After that, whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors. Another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. Sort of like today, the young people don't, they didn't live through World War II or World War I, and they don't know a lot of history. So they're hankering for this new world order and socialism, and they think it all sounds great, whereas we came out of fighting against that stuff, right? So now they've got a new generation of Israelites. All the other ones have passed away now, and these people don't know the Lord, and they don't know what he did for Israel. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord and served the Baals. Very similar to what we're seeing now. We're seeing people serve a lot of false gods. And we're seeing a lot of evil because of ignorance, because they don't know, okay? They forsook the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who had brought them out of Egypt. And unfortunately, they're following some corrupt leaders who do know, like the 80-plus-year-old Nancy Pelosi. Okay, she's encouraging these young people, and she knows how hard we fought to stay away from socialism and communism and all of that stuff. And here we are, it's coming around again, okay? Because they're trying to capture the minds of the young people, and they've been indoctrinating them right under our noses in our schools and our universities. All right, I know I lost both of my kids to public schools. They just became uncontrollable. They thought they knew everything, and they had a completely different idea of America than I ever grew up with. You know, when I grew up, we said the Pledge of Allegiance and we loved our country. That's not what's going on anymore, okay? All right. They forsook the Lord, the God of their ancestors who brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshiped various gods of the peoples around them. So here comes child sacrifice, okay, which we're going to start seeing, okay? Pretty soon we're going to start seeing the Jews sacrificing their children. And this is what's going to cause the Lord to bring wars, okay? They aroused the Lord's anger because they forsook him and served Baal and the Ashtoreths. So I'm assuming that's the... oh, maybe not. Okay. In his anger against Israel, the Lord gave them into the hands of raiders who plundered them. What did I say? You know, wars, enemies. You know, this is how the Lord deals with people when they get uppity and they get very rebellious. He sends an evil messenger against them. And so this is what's happened. Raiders have come now. He sold them into the hands of their enemies all around, whom they were no longer able to resist. Let's pray this doesn't happen to America, okay? Whenever Israel went out to fight, the hand of the Lord was against them to defeat them, just as he had sworn to them. They were in great distress. Then the Lord raised up judges who saved them out of the hands of these raiders, yet they would not listen to their judges, but prostituted themselves to other gods and worshiped them. They quickly turned from the ways of their ancestors who'd been obedient to the Lord's commands. Whenever the Lord raised up a judge for them, he was with the judge and saved them out of the hands of their enemies as long as the judge lived, for the Lord relented because of their groaning under those who oppressed and afflicted them. But when the judge died, the people returned to ways even more corrupt than those of their ancestors, following other gods and serving and worshiping them. They refused to give up their evil practices and stubborn ways. Sound familiar? Therefore, the Lord was very angry with Israel and said, because this nation has violated the covenant I ordained for their ancestors and has not listened to me, I will no longer drive out before them any of the nations Joshua left when he died. I'll use them to test Israel and see whether they'll keep the way of the Lord and walk in it as their ancestors did. They were probably saying, oh, those old fogies, our ancestors, what did they know? Just like our young people today. The Lord had allowed these nations to remain. He didn't drive them out at once by giving them into the hands of Joshua. The Lord had allowed those nations to remain. He didn't drive them out at once by giving them into the hands of Joshua, because the Lord knew your kids are going to rebel. You guys will all be dead and your ancestors are going to rebel. So I'm leaving some of these nations right here in your land because these are the people I'm going to use to test them and see if they'll relent. Okay, let's look here and see who wrote the book of Judges. And let's see who they think wrote it. Samuel. The prophet, says Samuel, the Talmud says, wrote the book of Judges and the book of Samuel until his death, at which point the prophets Nathan and Gad picked up the story, and the book of Kings, according to tradition, was written by the prophet Jeremiah. Wow. Okay, so we're starting to get into some really heavy people. Samuel was, well, we're going to hear about him soon, okay? I love you very much. Tomorrow we'll do Judges. We'll start with chapter 3. Please keep praying. Pray for me. I'm praying for you. And have a wonderful evening. I love you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.